The Washington Post is the premier newspaper in Washington. All the policymakers read it. It's very influential here in Washington, D.C., and obviously the White House does too. And the fact that this is the publication that Jamal Khashoggi actually wrote for. So it is significant, and it's also a signal that the foreign policy establishment has kind of had enough of what the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia is doing and is raising the questions. Now you've got heads of states demanding answers on what happened to Mr. Khashoggi and where's his body, and demanding that these answers be taken seriously.
As I mentioned, some really strong words from the Turkish president. What's the message he's trying to send, and who is he trying to send that message to?
Well, it's definitely it's a message to the White House and the Trump administration specifically, that they're dragging their feet on this, that these things need to be answered, and that the White House needs to take this matter seriously and not necessarily come up for excuses and justifications for the Saudi royal family or the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, but to be taken seriously, and that the whole international community is watching, and that they're not going to remain silent. So it's additional pressure. And so this White House is under extreme pressure from not only members within his own party, the political establishment, the media here in Washington, but now other heads of state that said, we've done the investigation and all fingers are pointing to Mohammed bin Salman and to the royal court there. Mr. President, the White House, what are you guys doing about this? And you need to act soon.
Right. The U.S. administration really hasn't been talking much about Khashoggi's killing as we get closer to the midterm elections. Meanwhile, Turkey really has been keeping up the pressure with the investigation and with the slow drip of information. Why do you think the U.S. isn't talking about it so much anymore? And what should we expect in the next few days?
Well, the White House may not be necessarily talking about it. Let's just, keep in mind that there was the mail bomber issue that was happening, and then the terrorist attack that happened in the synagogue that took the lives of members of the Jewish community. So there's a lot of distraction, not to mention also the midterm elections that's coming up. And Trump doesn't want to talk about Khashoggi, doesn't want to talk about his failed foreign policy. He wants to talk about what's happening at the southern border and making immigration one of his big things. So that's what he prefers to talk to. But as soon as this election is over, which is happening Tuesday, a lot of focus is going to come back to Khashoggi, especially as lawmakers return to Washington, D.C. Yeah. They're currently on recess campaigning, and when they return to Washington, D.C., there's a lot of activity that's planned, and expect more briefings, more inquiries, and Congress to put additional pressure on the White House and Trump directly to take action on Saudi Arabia on many fronts.
Has there been a response, any kind of reaction coming out of Saudi Arabia yet so far to this editorial in the Post?
So far there haven't, but there was answers yesterday. There were information that came out that in a phone call shortly after the disappearance of Mr. Khashoggi, but yet not before, they had not admitted that he was killed yet. There was a phone call between the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Kushner, as well as Bolton, where the Crown Prince, claims that Khashoggi was a dangerous Islamist, that he's somehow connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. So it's far different than what he was saying in public recently, claiming that this was a tragedy and apologizing for what had happened and promising to hold people accountable. He saw that this person was a threat, and obviously a lot of fingers are pointing to Mohammed bin Salman, that he ordered this killing. So there's definitely pressure on what's happening there. And we also heard that Ahmed ibn Abdulaziz, one of the influential princes, had returned from London back to Saudi Arabia just in case something does happen. So I think there may be a shakeup that's in the works there. There's definitely a lot of pressure on the kingdom, and some are predicting that Mohammed bin Salman is now becoming a huge liability for the royal family there.